Samsung S25 Ultra has been out for just about a month now. And ever since release, I've switched over to this as my daily phone. I spent enough time with the device now to give you an honest first impressions and a bit of a review. But instead of doing the typical thing of covering the specs and the features, I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I wanted to highlight the differences between the S24 Ultra and the S25 Ultra, and cover the three main themes that kept on coming up for me as I continue to use this device. In fact, the three themes could just be the three different titles for this video, which I'll probably end up using. And they are S25 Ultra, Ultra or Average. Or secondly, is the S25 Ultra the ideal creator's phone? And lastly, is this the death of an icon? Now, those three themes have a lot of overlap and we'll be covering why in a sec, but I also wanted to point out all the features that I'm actually using on the everyday, as well as the ones that I've tried once and not really used again. So let's get going. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Rafi and I am a medical doctor who also makes content here about tech, travel, and tips and tricks. So if you want to lead your ideal nerd life, this is probably the channel for you. A little bit of context as to why I keep upgrading to these Ultra devices year after year. My day job as a clinician involves me looking after patients, looking up lots of records, and either scribbling down numbers or results on bits of paper that I frequently lose. Ever since I discovered the S Pen and the screen off memo function, it's been an absolute game changer. Now I can do those little scribbles. It gets saved directly onto Samsung Notes and I can always find them instead of losing these bits of paper. As a content creator and photographer, the Samsung phones have always had really good cameras that have been consistent. In fact, the early version of this channel was recorded entirely on one of these phones. The S Pen here also allows me to edit photos and videos a little bit more precisely. Now, with that out of the way, what are the main differences between the S24 Ultra and the S25 Ultra? The moment you pick it up, the first thing you'll notice is now these more rounded corners rather than the rectangular slab like the S24. When you hold it, it feels a little bit more dense, though technically it is lighter. And I think it has to do with these new flat sides instead of the more rounded ones like before. In a way, this reminds me a little bit of the old iPhone 4 series, which also adopted a very similar design language. I have to say, I really like this new design. It feels a lot more premium, especially in this jet black colorway where the frame and the screen, everything just melds and it's this matte finish. There's just something very elegant about it. In terms of the hardware, the screen is ever so slightly larger with thinner bezels than last year. Inside, there is a new Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, which is a special version of the chip for just these devices. And the other hardware change has been the introduction of a new 50 megapixel ultra-wide lens as compared to the 10 megapixel from the S24. The S Pen is still there, but this has had a bit of a downgrade. It no longer has any Bluetooth functionality, so you can't use it as a remote shutter for your camera or use the Air actions. The bigger updates have been happening on the software front. The phone comes with OneUI 7, and that is a genuine refinement over what came before. It takes all the usual features you're used to and makes it much more colorful and vibrant. This software skin is now blazingly fast. The previous generation wasn't exactly slow, but you can really feel the snappiness this time around. There are also some little changes that affect the everyday. One of my favorites is now having the search bar for the apps at the bottom of the phone so you can easily reach it. I personally am a big fan of having the split notifications and the quick settings as separate panels. This means that each of the quick settings now has a bigger target to hit, and it's reliably in the same spot without getting cluttered up by notifications. Galaxy II already has been released previously, and a lot of the feature set has been updated. There's little changes here and there, and I'll focus on the main ones. My personal favorite is this new natural language selection for settings. Instead of trying to remember what a specific feature is called, you can now type in a rough approximation and generally search the settings menu to find what you're looking for. Another big change has been the integration of Gemini from Google. Now when you press and hold the power button, Gemini gets summoned instead of Bixby, but I feel like this version has Bixby kind of sprinkled into the Gemini system as well. This enables the phone to do multi-app actions. What that means is you can pick up the phone and, for example, search for something like an event online and have the phone then add it to the calendar in one single step. Look up when Billie Eilish is playing in Melbourne and add it to my calendar.
Got it. You want to create these two events. Do you want to go ahead and create them right now?
Yes.
Okay, everything's done.
When it works, it's truly magical. It feels like you have a personal assistant in your pocket, but it's not quite super reliable just yet. With software being the main focus, there are now additional new features like the Now bar, which gives you little updates, as well as Now Briefing, which gives you an AI summary of the day. Circle to Search has also been upgraded. In addition to looking at what's on your screen, you can also actually use it to essentially Shazam. If there's any music playing in the background, it can now identify that as well. Customizations are another focus on the new OneUI, with many more options to fiddle and get your phone looking just the way you like it. Instead of just plain transparency, there is extensive use of this new frosted effect, and widgets now have this more pill-like shape. And especially of the frosted effect, I'm quite a big fan. It just looks so much more elegant. If you want to take your customization even further, Samsung also offers the Good Lock app like it's done in previous generations for further customization. I have to say, I really like Samsung's approach here, where there's lots of theming and customizations options by default, but for the nitty-gritty, it's separated out into an official app so that you don't have to jailbreak it, you don't have to install third-party applications, but something official that lets you tinker to your heart's content. So that sounds like a decent lot of upgrades. So what's the problem? Well, apart from the slight increase in screen size, the S Pen, and the 50 megapixel ultra-wide shooter, all the other features I've mentioned kind of exist in the rest of the Samsung Galaxy S25 lineup. Furthermore, a lot of these features, as you just heard, are software-based, and they are likely to come to previous generation devices via software update, which brings us to the question, is the S25 Ultra or average? Does having a ever so slightly thinner bezel, an S Pen, and an extra high resolution camera justify calling it an Ultra device? For me, it definitely does because of how much I use the S Pen, but I'm not sure if that'd be enough for other enthusiasts out there. While we're on the camera front, there are some subtle changes that are sprinkled throughout. Firstly, we've already talked about the 50 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, and that seems to generate slightly better quality images than the S24. The ultra-wide shots are now usable, and there's now plenty of resolution to crop in. The ability to shoot log format has been on my wish list for a long while. I have used the phone as my primary camera many times, especially to make these videos. Being able to shoot in this flatter color profile so that I can color grade it later is a very welcome upgrade. I also feel like the color science in the new series is ever so slightly different. I feel like the S25 Ultra produces photos that are a little bit more natural looking than the previous generation. The camera now has the best face feature from the Pixel lineup, which allows you to actually select a version of a face of a portrait photo. So if someone's blinking, for example, you can tap a version where they're not. The audio eraser is also another function that's borrowed from the Pixel line. That is a useful addition here. After shooting a video, you can essentially separate out the components of the audio and dampen any ones that you don't like. Here's a quick demo. This is a video out in the city. It's pretty noisy. Let's see how audio eraser works. This is a video out in the city. It's pretty noisy. Let's see how audio eraser works. Custom filters have been around for a while now, but Samsung decided to highlight that this time around in Unpacked. Essentially, it allows you to edit your photos using the style of a different photo. So basically, it's like making your own filter. I've been using this on and off for the last few years, and it works pretty well. The Gallery app also has some interesting features that I didn't notice in the previous generation, mainly because I didn't really used to shoot in motion photos, which seems to be a prerequisite here. If you swipe up on a photo, you'll get a whole bunch of these editing suggestions, some of which are actually really nice, especially the long exposure mode. On the note of the Gallery app, it now has a pretty decent editor built in where you can actually tweak quite a few settings more intuitively. And if you do end up shooting in log, you can actually apply the default color grade right in the phone. This is something that doesn't seem to be available on the iPhones that can also shoot in log. All these features are nicely integrated into the default software experience and come with the phone out of the box, which brings me to the second title that I was going to use for this video, is the Samsung S25, the ideal creator's phone. Again, With those upgrades, is there any problems? Well, this brings us to my very last title, the death of an icon. Well, that's the dramatic version. I suppose I could have called it Identity Crisis. So to understand this, we need to go back in history a little bit. Back in the day, Samsung had the Note line, which was the true enthusiast phone. It had the weird and wacky functions that only enthusiasts would care about. It was something that had all the features and the kitchen sink. Did we really need curved glass on our screens? Nope, but it had it anyway. At a time where phones were barely 5 inches, did we really need something that was pushing 7? Nope, but we got it anyway. But guess which lineup had it? That's right, the Note. The Note series was known to push boundaries. This is where Samsung tried out new and exciting innovations to see how they could further smartphone technology. In fact, the Notes were so cutting edge that I had to look this up, but this is true. The Note 20 Ultra from back 5 years ago already had around a 6.9-inch screen, 12 gigs of RAM, a 5x optical zoom, whilst also having 2 SIM card slots. In 2021, Samsung merged the lines together with the S21 Ultra, and that was the first time the design language changed from that boxy style to these rounded corners. That phone did not have a built-in S Pen, but we've had the same 5000 milliamp hour battery since that time. And even though it was probably not required at the time, there was a version of the S21 Ultra that came with 16 gigabytes of RAM. After the S21 Ultra, Samsung switched back to the old design language of the Notes, releasing the S22 Ultra in the more familiar rectangular boxy shape. It again made the S Pen internal, decreased the latency of the S Pen and added air gestures, and updated the internal storage up to 1 terabyte. The S23 Ultra came along and upgraded the main sensor to a 200 megapixel module. Sometime around this period, foldables also started to enter the mix, with the Z Fold and Flip series taking the place of the old Note lineup. Now, the thing with the Z Flip and Fold series is that it doesn't quite have that everything, including the kitchen sink, sort of appeal. The folding mechanism is an engineering marvel, and it's getting better every generation. But those phones don't tend to have the best cameras out there. They don't happen to have the biggest batteries. And also, something that I find really useful is having the S Pen built in. They don't have that either. But that seems to be where Samsung's focus is at the moment. And with the rate of change in the Ultra devices slowing down, which leaves the Ultra series, the descendants of the legendary Note series, feeling a little left behind. And now with the change in design language to resemble the rest of the S25 family, I feel like it's losing its identity as the flagship of all things possible. Does it still have enough of that innovative DNA to continue to be an Ultra phone? For me, it's still an amazing phone, and I will continue to use it for the foreseeable future. But what about you? What do you think about the new S25 series, especially the Ultra? Let me know below. And if you'd like to see what it's like going to one of the Unpacked experiences, click over here. I'll see you in the next one.